Beloved, today I want to reveal a spiritual truth that can set you free from every evil and witchcraft. The power of salt. God has given it as a weapon to cleanse, protect, and break every chain of darkness in your life. When you exercise faith, you can freeze and neutralize every evil influence, walking in the freedom and victory that Christ has already won for you. The power of salt is not just a simple seasoning for our food. It is a sacred instrument, a divine element that has been honored through generations as a protector, a purifier, and a force against darkness. Imagine the salt in its pristine form as more than a physical substance. It is a symbol, a tangible piece of creation imbued with spiritual significance. When you hold it, sprinkle it, or even witness its crystalline structure, you are connecting to something far greater than yourself, something that stands against every negative force that seeks to harm your mind, your soul, or your destiny. Freezing salt takes this power to a new level. By placing salt in the element of cold, in the silence of ice, you are creating a physical representation of holding evil at bay, of suspending darkness so that it can no longer move, penetrate, or influence your life. Just as water freezes and traps whatever is inside, the frozen salt becomes a spiritual boundary, an invisible wall that evil cannot cross. It is a reminder that the moment you take control of your environment, your faith, and your spiritual tools, you reclaim authority over your life. You are no longer a passive participant in the schemes of negativity. You become a proactive guardian of your own peace. There is an ancient wisdom in understanding that protection begins with intention. By intentionally freezing salt, you are sending a message to yourself, to the universe, and to every unseen force that you are prepared, that you are aware, and that you are protected. Every grain of salt trapped in ice carries with it the energy of your decision to stand firm, to declare that evil has no place in your home, your body, or your relationships. The act is both symbolic and powerful because it requires mindfulness, and mindfulness is the bridge between spiritual intent and real-world manifestation. As the salt freezes, it reminds you that some things must be paused, some influences must be stopped, and some attacks must be neutralized before they reach you. This is not merely superstition, it is the active application of spiritual law. The energy you put into the act, the focus, the prayer, the belief, transforms the simple act of freezing salt into a ritual of liberation. When you touch the frozen salt, when you keep it in your sacred spaces, or when you use it in moments of reflection, you are continually reinforcing the message that you are untouchable by the forces of darkness. It is a shield that works in tandem with your faith, with your inner light, and with the purity of your heart. Furthermore, freezing salt is a declaration that negativity cannot evolve or progress in your presence. Ice immobilizes, it halts motion, it freezes what seeks to disrupt, distort, or destroy. Spiritually, this is profound because every act of evil, every whisper of witchcraft, and every intention of harm relies on energy, motion, and influence. By freezing salt, you are symbolically freezing those energies, neutralizing their momentum, and creating a sacred pause. A space where nothing harmful can grow, manifest, or reach you. And in this frozen stillness, you find freedom. Freedom not just from specific acts of witchcraft or curses, but freedom from fear itself. Fear is the tool that darkness uses to manipulate. And by holding, observing, and trusting the frozen salt, you step into a reality where fear loses its power. You begin to understand that evil is powerless without your consent, that negativity can only touch you if you allow it to, and that with the proper spiritual tools and awareness, liberation is not a distant dream, it is your present experience. The frozen salt becomes more than an object, it becomes a symbol of your sovereignty, a marker of your authority over your spiritual domain. It is a daily reminder that you are not a victim, that you are not at the mercy of unseen forces, and that every small, intentional act of spiritual protection adds up to a life of freedom, light, and peace. It teaches patience as well, because ice does not yield instantly, just as the breaking of spiritual attacks requires time, consistency, and unwavering faith. The frozen salt stands as a testament to your dedication, to the vigilance of your heart, and to the unshakable truth that you can indeed free yourself from all evil. Every time you look at it, touch it, or meditate with it, you reinforce the protective barrier you have created. This is the essence of spiritual empowerment, transforming simple, natural elements into tools of divine liberation. You are learning in the most profound way that freedom from darkness is not merely the absence of evil. It is the presence of conscious, deliberate, protective energy in your life. Through this practice, you become a living testament to the principle that the sacred, when combined with intention, is more powerful than any negative force, more enduring than any curse, and more liberating than anything the darkness can offer. The frozen salt, therefore, is both an anchor and a beacon. It anchors you to your own strength, your own faith, and your own light, while simultaneously acting as a beacon that signals to the universe that you are shielded, protected, and untouchable. Every crystal of salt within the ice embodies your resolve, your belief, and your victory over fear and manipulation. As it remains frozen, so too does the evil that seeks to intrude upon your life remain halted, powerless, and contained. In practicing this, you are participating in a timeless tradition of spiritual defense, one that has been recognized in countless cultures, religions, and mystical practices, the use of natural elements to channel divine protection. The combination of salt and ice is a simple yet profound ritual, demonstrating that liberation and protection are accessible to anyone willing to act with awareness and faith. You are not only defending yourself, you are reclaiming your personal power, your inner peace, and your sacred space from all forms of negativity. The process transforms both the environment and your consciousness. It teaches discipline, it reinforces hope, it strengthens faith, and it continuously reminds you that evil has no standing in your life unless you give it one. The frozen salt is your silent sentinel, your guardian crystal, your daily affirmation of spiritual freedom, constantly present, constantly active, and constantly reminding you of the truth. You have the power to freeze out all evil and witchcraft, and you have the power to walk freely in the light of your own soul. 2. Understanding the spiritual significance of salt in protection rituals and its historical usage in banishing negative energies. Understanding the spiritual significance of salt in protection rituals begins with recognizing that salt is not merely a culinary ingredient, it is a sacred substance, a creation of the earth that has been honored for centuries as a guardian against darkness and malevolent forces. Across cultures, traditions, and religions, salt has always carried an energy beyond its physical properties. In ancient times, it was considered a form of life itself, a preservative not only for food, but for spiritual integrity. To understand salt's role in protection, one must first see it as a conduit for divine energy, an element that holds the power to cleanse, purify, and neutralize negativity. When salt is sprinkled, placed in corners, or carried as a talisman, it is not just a symbolic gesture, it is a deliberate act of spiritual alignment. Each grain becomes a tiny vessel of your intention, a fragment of light that creates barriers against destructive energies, witchcraft, curses, and all forms of spiritual attack. Salt's crystalline structure is particularly significant because crystals are known to hold, reflect, and amplify energy. This means that when you use salt with focus and belief, it becomes more than matter. It becomes a spiritual amplifier that extends your protective reach. In many spiritual traditions, salt has been used to mark boundaries, to sanctify spaces, and to cleanse homes, sacred objects, and even individuals. In these practices, salt is never passive, it is an active participant in the work of safeguarding and liberation. Its natural purity resonates with the divine, and this resonance is precisely what repels negative forces. Understanding this allows you to approach salt not as a mere tool, but as an ally, a tangible partner in the invisible battle for peace, clarity, and spiritual freedom. The act of using salt, therefore, is never meaningless. It is imbued with the authority of intention. When you place salt in your home, carry it with you, or integrate it into rituals, you are communicating to the universe and to every force of darkness that you are protected, aware, and empowered. This awareness shifts your energy and elevates your presence. The spiritual significance of salt is also deeply linked to its purifying qualities. Just as salt preserves food from decay, it preserves the sanctity of your energy, keeping harmful vibrations, negative thoughts, and malicious intentions from infiltrating your life. In doing so, salt teaches you the principle of discernment, showing you that protection begins with consciousness. You cannot rely on objects alone. The energy behind the act must be deliberate, focused, and aligned with your highest good. When this principle is applied, salt becomes more than a material substance. It becomes a spiritual tool that interacts dynamically with your faith, your intentions, and your actions. Furthermore, the history of salt in protection rituals is a testimony to its effectiveness. From ancient civilizations that surrounded homes with salt to protect from evil spirits, to mystics who used salt lines to create spiritual boundaries, its use has persisted because of its enduring power. It serves as a reminder that some forces are timeless, that some practices are rooted in the laws of energy that transcend generations, and that when properly harnessed, the simplest elements can yield profound protection. Salt also serves as a mirror of your own inner purity. When you work with salt, you are invited to reflect on your intentions, your clarity, and your commitment to maintaining a life free from negative influence. It reinforces that protection is not passive. It requires active participation, faith, and awareness. By understanding salt's spiritual significance, you gain insight into a universal truth, that the tools of protection are available to all who are willing to acknowledge their power and act with conscious intention. Each time you utilize salt in your spiritual practice, you are reconnecting with this ancient wisdom, strengthening the invisible walls that guard your heart, mind, and spirit, and asserting your right to a life of peace, freedom, and spiritual sovereignty. The energy of salt works in harmony with your own energy. It amplifies your resilience, strengthens your spiritual presence, and makes it increasingly difficult for negativity, witchcraft, or malicious intentions to find a foothold. You come to realize that protection is not a one-time event. It is a continuous, dynamic process that requires vigilance, understanding, and deliberate action. The spiritual significance of salt extends beyond mere ritual. It is an educational tool, a teacher of boundaries, a guardian of the sacred, and a partner in your journey toward liberation. By respecting its power and integrating it into your spiritual practices with intention, you are able to create an environment where evil is not only deterred but rendered powerless, and where your life becomes a testament to the enduring strength of conscious, spiritual protection. Salt reminds you that even the smallest actions, when performed with awareness and faith, have the capacity to create monumental effects. It shows you that liberation from negative influences begins with a single, intentional step, and that the simplest of elements, when understood and honored, can serve as a steadfast ally in your ongoing journey towards spiritual freedom. The awareness of salt's spiritual power empowers you to act decisively, to protect your home, your mind, and your soul, and to cultivate a sacred space where negativity cannot thrive, where peace is not fragile but fortified, and where your inner light is nurtured, strengthened, and preserved against any form of darkness influence or malicious intention. Freezing salt enhances its protective power in ways that go beyond the ordinary understanding of spiritual tools. When salt is frozen, it becomes a symbol of absolute control over the forces of darkness, an embodiment of the principle that negativity cannot move, grow, or act without permission. Ice itself represents stillness, suspension, and containment. It halts the flow of energy, immobilizes motion, and creates a space in which nothing harmful can advance. By combining salt with freezing, you are performing a deliberate spiritual act. You are taking an element known for its purity, for its cleansing properties, and you are empowering it with a force that halts, restrains, and neutralizes evil influence. Every grain of salt trapped in ice becomes a guardian, a tiny soldier standing still yet powerful, holding back any intrusion of darkness, witchcraft, curses, or harmful energy. This act transforms salt from a simple tool into a dynamic instrument of protection, a physical representation of your spiritual authority, and a tangible demonstration of your refusal to allow malevolence into your life. When you freeze salt, you are engaging in a ritual that requires intention, focus, and belief, because spiritual energy responds to the alignment of mind, heart, and action. It is not merely the physical process of freezing that matters. It is the consciousness you invest, the prayers you whisper, the faith you carry, and the determination you express. The ice becomes a vessel for your spiritual will, holding within it your resolve to remain untouchable by negativity. Every time you observe the frozen salt, touch it, or meditate with it, you reinforce the barrier you have established against unseen forces. The symbolism is profound. Evil cannot penetrate what is solid, unmoving, and fortified. Just as ice stops the flow of water, frozen salt stops the flow of harmful energies, creating a sacred pause in which malevolent intentions lose their momentum and cannot manifest. Freezing salt is also an act of patience and discipline, reminding you that protection is not always instantaneous. It requires consistency, vigilance, and intentionality. Spiritual defense is not a fleeting reaction, but a continuous practice, and by incorporating frozen salt into your rituals, you create a long-lasting shield that endures over time. This practice teaches the principle that small actions, when performed with faith and awareness, accumulate to create immense spiritual strength. The process also emphasizes the principle of containment. Just as freezing traps the water within a solid form, freezing salt traps the potential of evil forces, preventing them from reaching your life, your relationships, and your sacred spaces. It is a visual and tangible representation of control, showing that darkness cannot act where you have deliberately established boundaries. Furthermore, freezing salt serves as a psychological reinforcement. When you see the ice, you are reminded that you are not a passive participant in spiritual battles. You are an active agent of protection, empowered to defend your life, your mind, and your soul. This practice builds confidence, faith, and spiritual resilience, and it cultivates a mindset in which fear loses its grip. The act of freezing salt also demonstrates a universal spiritual truth. That matter, when infused with intention, becomes more than itself. Salt and ice, both natural elements, transform into instruments of divine protection when you engage them with consciousness, focus, and purpose. This reminds you that spiritual empowerment is always accessible. It does not require complexity or extravagance, only awareness, deliberate action, and belief. The ritual of freezing salt reinforces the understanding that protection is not only external but internal. As the frozen salt guards your space, it also reinforces your inner boundaries, your clarity, and your commitment to maintaining a life free from malevolent influence. The ice becomes a mirror of your determination, a reflection of your spiritual authority, and a tangible reminder that evil is powerless in your presence. Additionally, freezing salt aligns with the principle that time, consistency, and persistence amplify spiritual power. Ice takes time to form. It requires cold, patience, and stability. Likewise, the process of neutralizing evil and witchcraft in your life requires ongoing vigilance, conscious effort, and sustained faith. By integrating frozen salt into your spiritual practices, you are creating a lasting effect, a protective energy that remains active and responsive, guarding you continuously against harmful forces. This practice also teaches that protection is multifaceted. It is not just about repelling negativity, but about establishing a sacred space where positive energy can flourish, where peace is nurtured, and where your life is aligned with divine order. Frozen salt becomes a focal point, a spiritual anchor, and a daily reminder that you have authority over your environment and your spiritual state. Every time you engage with it, you reinforce your connection to this power, and the simple act of freezing salt transforms into a profound ritual of liberation, empowerment, and defense. Through this practice, you internalize the truth that darkness only has influence where there is permission, and that by intentionally freezing salt, you are withdrawing that permission, establishing clear boundaries, and taking decisive action to protect yourself from evil, witchcraft, and all forms of spiritual harm, demonstrating that even the simplest natural elements, when approached with consciousness and faith, hold immense potential to transform your spiritual life and secure your freedom from negativity. Practical steps to create your own frozen salt ritual at home are simple yet profound, and they allow you to actively engage in protecting yourself and your space from all forms of evil, witchcraft, and negative influence. First, you must choose the salt that resonates with purity and spiritual energy. Coarse sea salt or Himalayan salt is ideal because it is closest to its natural, unprocessed state, holding within it the raw essence of the earth and the divine energy embedded in creation. The purity of the salt is not just symbolic. It is an energetic requirement, because the closer the salt remains to its original form, the more receptive it is to your intentions, and the more effective it becomes as a spiritual tool. Next, you select a clean, transparent container, preferably glass, that allows you to see the salt and the frozen formation, symbolizing clarity, transparency, and openness to divine protection. Before adding the salt, take a moment to center yourself, breathe deeply, and focus your mind and heart on the purpose of the ritual. Intention is everything. Without deliberate consciousness, the salt is merely a physical substance, but with intention, it transforms into a vessel of spiritual authority. As you pour the salt into the container, visualize a protective barrier forming. See every grain as a tiny sentinel standing firm against negativity, and speak affirmations or prayers of freedom, light, and protection. Some choose to recite verses, blessings, or personal statements that align with their faith, reinforcing the power of the act and charging the salt with energy that is specific, personal, and spiritually potent. After the salt is fully placed in the container, fill it with water if desired, because water acts as a conductor of energy, amplifying the protective qualities of the salt, and then place the container in the freezer. As the water freezes around the salt, meditate on the act itself. Imagine the freezing process as the immobilization of evil, witchcraft, and harmful energy that seeks to enter your life. Visualize every negative influence being paused, contained, and rendered powerless by the combination of salt, water, and ice. And feel the liberation that comes from knowing that your spiritual boundary is active and effective. Once frozen, the salt can remain in your sacred space, near entrances, in your room, or in any area where you feel protection is needed. The frozen salt not only serves as a barrier, but also as a constant reminder of your authority over your spiritual environment, reinforcing your vigilance and your commitment to maintaining peace, purity, and freedom. You can interact with the frozen salt daily by holding it, meditating with it, or silently reaffirming your intention to remain untouchable by negativity. In some practices, people may gently sprinkle small amounts of salt around the perimeter of their home or in strategic locations, integrating the frozen salt into a broader spiritual defense system that combines visualization, prayer, and deliberate action. Over time, as the ice naturally melts, you may choose to replace the salt or refreeze it, creating a continuous cycle of renewal, reinforcement, and spiritual fortification. This cyclic process mirrors the reality that protection is not a one-time act, but a consistent, ongoing practice requiring awareness, dedication, and faith. The frozen salt ritual also teaches patience, discipline, and mindfulness because it demands that you slow down, focus your intention, and engage fully with the symbolic act of freezing negativity. Every step, from selecting the salt to observing the frozen crystals, is an opportunity to cultivate spiritual presence, awareness, and power, reminding you that liberation from harmful energies is not passive but the result of deliberate, conscious action. Additionally, the act of creating frozen salt offers an accessible and repeatable method of spiritual defense that anyone can perform, regardless of experience or background, showing that empowerment is universal and available to all who are willing to act with focus and faith. The practical steps of this ritual, while simple, are transformative because they combine natural elements, intentionality, visualization, and spiritual law, creating a multi-layered defense that protects both your physical environment and your inner consciousness. By integrating frozen salt into your spiritual practices, you cultivate an ongoing state of readiness, a tangible expression of your spiritual authority, and a visible marker of the sacred boundaries you have established. You come to understand that liberation from witchcraft, curses, and negativity is not abstract. It is a daily, intentional practice, and that through these small yet deliberate steps, you assert your sovereignty over your life, your space, and your energy. The frozen salt becomes a living testament to your commitment, a silent guardian, and a powerful symbol of the truth that with conscious action, focused intention, and faith, you can protect yourself from all harm, establish spiritual boundaries that are firm and enduring, and cultivate a life of peace, clarity, and freedom from evil influence. Every time you engage with it, you reinforce your authority, you strengthen your spiritual presence, and you participate actively in the timeless practice of turning natural elements into instruments of divine protection. ensuring that your life is continually shielded, your mind is calm, and your soul remains untouchable, impervious to all forms of darkness, witchcraft, and malicious intent, demonstrating that practical, deliberate action is the cornerstone of spiritual empowerment and liberation.